Hello, friends, and welcome to Anchor TV. I'm Gordon Flowers, and we're shooting this live from the hub in downtown Cartersville. And today we have a guest, and here's our host, Mr. Bobby Lawrence.
What's up, Gordon?
Hello, Bobby.
How
Good
you?
to see you.
How you?
I'm glad you asked. Things are just doing wonderful for me. I'd like to introduce this young lady right here. She's our guest today. Your name is Keven.
Yes.
Covert.
Right, you got
And
it.
you have a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and his name is Keven.
You got it.
Now, let me get this straight. You spell your name Keven,
You got it.
and your husband spells it with a QUVI with a smiley face emoji and an N.
Something like that.
That's
Sounds
awesome.
good.
I knew it.
With a Q?
QU.
Oh, well, she's the author of Brick by Brick, and it's really good, and it's got a lot of your story tied in it. Tell me.
It does in places
Yeah.
of being writing and
Yeah.
letting the Lord know.
Well, how did that book come about?
It was a vision that the Lord gave me. The center, the opening where the heart is, was the vision the Lord gave me when I'd gone through healing. But one morning I was doing my devotions, and the Lord's like, okay, now you're going to write a devotional. Help women heal from their abortion. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm supposed to book and go to work, and I'm done. But by the end of the day, I realized this is something that needed to be done, because a book of this nature was not out there. There's plenty of healing studies and healing books and stories that you can read from women that have gone through this experience. But this is a devotional, one-on-one with you and the Lord, walking this journey of healing with Him for about 13 weeks.
So what you're saying is you experienced having an abortion. Would you like to talk about that?
It's fine. Ask away.
Well, what brought that on?
Life circumstances. I was getting ready to get married. I was getting ready to graduate college. Was not in my future at that moment. And just happened to where I found myself pregnant. I had no relationship. And it just wasn't part of the picture. And in the room, going to the clinic that morning, the Lord gave me 3 opportunities to leave and to walk out to save my child. But that didn't happen, unfortunately. And instead of walking down the hall where it said exit, and I could leave the clinic for life, I turned to the room and the door of death. And mine started. It was taken. It was my choice. It was a selfish decision. I regret it every day. That's something I would recommend anyone to do for any reason, because God's in control. This is His life. This is His child. But it's something that I chose to do. Many women, it's forced upon them, and they don't have a choice. But there's many that make that choice because of life circumstances, just not the right time, or they can't handle it, or they don't want to bring a child into this world because of all the stuff that's going on, especially now.
Yeah. So there's repercussions, right?
Definitely repercussions.
Even though they tell you, yeah, it's just tissue, it's fetal tissue, it's really nothing to it. So it is something, isn't it? It's a living being inside of you. And so how do you cope with that? How do you cope with knowing you extinguish life?
I think it's just really what you believe inside and who you're depending on to be in control of your life. At the time when I made that choice, I was backslidden. You know, I grew up in and out of church, and about 17, I walked away. And when I was 21, almost 22, I made this decision. And I realized that afterwards, I was like, I'm relieved. It's almost like I can go on with life. You know, everything will be different. Everything will be the same, which is what they tell you in the clinic. You know, just do this and be over and done with, and go on with the life normally. Well, you don't live a life normally. You think about the situation that you chose to do pretty much every day. It comes up in some way. And you can either go into denial or go into depression. Well, behind my brick wall that I built over the years was denial. I shoved the experience down so deep inside that I didn't want anybody to know anything. And I was just going to hide my secret and go on with life. And that's what I did for about 29 years.
Wow. So, yeah, I've heard other women say that they've even kept up with how old that child would have been.
Yes.
And I thought, well, man, that's
That lets you know how deep it is.
It's that deep.
It's a part of your
Oh,
life.
he would be 20 years old now, or he'll be, and man, that's
They
heavy.
They don't put that poster up at Planned Parenthood.
No, they don't. It's the
Yeah.
last thing they're going to do.
So you believe, honestly, that all the ones who do this, it's something that, like, they never tell you it's going to stick with you. No, you're fine. You'll walk out
No,
and it'll never cross your mind again.
exactly.
It's something that's always with the person that does it.
Exactly.
So this is a godsend.
It's a godsend. It's a devotional. It's the way the Lord's saying, I'm here. I forgive you. I love you. Let's go through healing together. Let's do this journey. You're not alone in the situation. There are plenty of retreats and Bible studies to help women and men go through healing for this decision so that they can find hope and they can have forgiveness from the Lord and they
Yeah.
can have love and the things in their life that they need back. It's like the great exchange, which is what the cross is all about. This is the power that Jesus gives us, that he offers us forgiveness and love and acceptance and joy, when exact opposite reasons that we made that decision, or the decision was made for us, or we're forced upon us.
Yeah.
It's him that gives us that hope. And realizing that it's a daily process. The book is full of devotionals. You could take this 13-week devotion and turn it into a year study. Someone told me a couple years back, this isn't a devotional, it's a lifetime of devotions, because it's the Holy Spirit literally speaking to the heart. It was written, I wrote the words, but they're not my words. They're the Holy Spirit.
And it really brings about restoration, and it really exposes His grace, His mercy, and His love. So there's forgiveness for this, even when we mess up. And I guess that's with everything: alcoholism, drugs, all the different stuff. We can still, by His grace, now there's still consequences for our sin. I think a lot of times, but then we're harder on ourselves. So, why did I do this? And we don't forgive us when God forgives us. And it's across everything. I mean, it's not just abortion, but to be honest with you, lying's bad. Sin's a sin. Either way you go, drunkenness.
This seems like something that would stick
Well,
with
it's
the person forever. And one of the bad things now is you've got, like, Gloria Steinem talking about what a wonderful thing it was when I had an abortion. And you've got all these people who are fighting for it. And I bet this is, this isn't like documented, but I bet a lot of them who are championing the abortion have never had one.
yeah, it could be.
And there are some that have had it,
Right.
and they're thinking it's fine, it's cool, and they're working in the clinics, or they're pro-abortion, and it's like, it's your decision. It's not up to the courts. It is my decision whether I have it or have not. And that's why you have a lot of fighting, and why a lot of the picketing, to where when they realize that their chance of not being allowed to have that freedom is going to be taken away.
But a lot of the young ones, I bet they haven't gone through with it, because I would find it harder for them to champion or be so, like, I think a lot of the younger ones are about, well, this is who I am. This is my body. You don't get a choice. But they haven't been through it. I would think that this would be one of the, like you said, it would stick with you forever. And it's always something that's in your head. It never goes away. The people who are championing it afterwards, I mean, they've got to be deceived.
They are definitely deceived. It's like the scales are on their eyes. They can't even see what's in front of them. They can't see the hope. They don't have the hope. And they need hope. They need Jesus just like the rest of us, for no matter what. A sin is a sin to the Lord. And like you were saying, Bobby, grace is what the Lord gives us to go through it.
Yeah.
But there comes a time when we realize that we need to go through healing. It's like that wall of denial can be so high and so thick, or it turns into depression.
Yeah.
Where you can't even handle life and what's going on. And you revert to drugs, the alcohol, food, whatever you need to.
Which brings about more stuff. So, and there's two parts to this. So there's the love and the mercy and everything else, but then there's the warning signs. Hey, don't do this. I mean, if a 747 crashed today, that'd be pretty tragic. There's 400 and something people on board. If one crashed today and one crashed tomorrow, it'd be all over the news. They'd be talking about ending flights. But with abortion equivalent to 500 747s crashing every single day, it's a holocaust in the mother's belly, especially in black mothers' bellies. It's genocide. I mean, it's terrible, and mum is the word. It's almost like it's birth control, and that's really sad. And I think about that all the time, and some of the girls that we've dealt with, and the scarring and the hurt, and nobody's really warning. You don't hear a lot of the warnings. We know there's grace and mercy and forgiveness, but you hardly hear anybody say, "Don't do this. It's going to hurt."
Right, because it's a choice, and there are women's centers that you'll go into. I worked at one for almost 2 years. That you go in and you find out you're pregnant, and then immediately I want an abortion, and then that's when I would speak up and say, "Listen, one, you really don't. Here's the repercussions. Here's what I went through. Here's what I felt for 29 years before I went through healing. Yes, there's healing and there's hope afterwards, but that's not a choice that you want to make. You want to stay focused on the fact that this is a life inside of you." And many of them, especially young people, see there's just a blob of tissue and your life can get on normal afterward. But they don't tell them the fact that they may die in the midst of this. There are repercussions for it. You can go about living a quote unquote normal life, you think, but that choice has been living, like you said, you revert to something else. And eventually you need to go through healing. And those who go through healing and realize that this is a child, that they need to memorialize that child, name the child, give the child back to the Lord, and let him begin to heal you and to have you forgive. I have a thing, you can't forgive yourself for that decision. But what you need to do is forgive those in the process that helped you make this decision, or the doctors. But what you need to do is accept Jesus' love, his forgiveness. That's where the key is. The bottom line is Jesus, and is to talk about what Jesus has done for us. Well, the great exchange took place on the cross. And it's what we need to do is to receive from Jesus everything that he has for us. And it's hard because, like you said, Bob, it's like, forgive myself. That's a tough decision. But the thing is you can't forgive yourself. Jesus did pay the ultimate price and the ultimate sacrifice of forgiveness. And it is so simple that it's hard for someone to do, especially when it comes to thou shalt not kill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, what got you to the point to where, how bad did it get before you realized, hey, something's wrong here?
About 29 years, I stuffed it. Raised 3 girls, homeschooled the girls. My husband, the family, and I were very involved in ministry. And every once in a while, things would pop up like, "Oh, Mom, let's go do this." Hold the signs on the street, after church on a Sunday about choose life. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you have no idea what I've done, because my girls were too little to know. But slowly, the Lord began to prick my heart, and I went to an event, a spiritual event with the House of Prayer movement, and there on the ground were all these little baby shoes, and there was someone there waiting to talk about a Bible study that I could go through for abortion. And I'm like, okay, I ran from it. But the next day I went back to the last day, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I'll do this. And I had a young girl with me that I had taught in church when she was 5 years old, and she was 24 at the time. And I'm like, you make a phone call, find out the times, and we'll do this together. So together, we went through the healing for our abortion. And while I was sitting there, all I said is, I want my brick wall to come down, stone by stone, boulder by boulder. I want it down to the ground. I want it done. And when we arrived the first day, they said, well, what does your abortion look like if it were a wound? Everybody gave their answer. My answer was a black calloused ball that opened up and looked like a heart. And out came all these smiley faces. And I'm like, smiley faces? This is really strange. So I told my answer, and one of my leaders just grinning from me cheek to cheek. And she's like, just wait. And a year later, the Lord called me to write the book. And it's a devotional. It's literally a devotional. It's his words speaking to you, just as like in Jesus calling. They're not mine. in the midst of writing, I would be crying as I'm writing the words because they're just flowing, and I had no idea what it's saying until I went back later on after spending hours with the Lord. For 5 hours, I'd spend with him, and he'd give me one devotion. But
Wow.
it was him preparing my heart and my spirit for what needed to take place in someone else's heart. So it's like when you open up and you say, Lord, let me see what you see. Let me hear what you hear. But when you say, Lord, let me feel what you feel, wow. Watch out.
Yeah, he'll reveal it.
You will feel it. It's amazing. And as I prepare for a retreat in 2 weeks for women to go through abortion healing, I'm beginning to ask those questions again. And then it is. It's like, wow, you better be ready for anything. And the devil doesn't like it, and he's going to kick and scream and do everything he can to cause division or distraction to get off of what the Lord has called you to do. So that's a passion.
So you mentioned baby shoes piled up. What was that?
Baby shoes, there's a ministry that Rebecca Porter has in Florida, and A Cry Without a Voice. And it's basically little baby shoes that she takes all over and has all over the United States. And attached to this little baby shoe is a card, and it's a note from the mom to their child.
Wow.
And that's the wow. When I saw this big, huge blanket in between the two bathrooms and on there covered with shoes, I just turned and walked away. I didn't want anything to do with that. I heard about that ministry, but I wanted nothing to do with it. October Baby had just come out that April, and this event happened in May.
Wow.
And it became real. And I knew that Lord was already working on me, and it was time.
It's crazy. When you said that, I was thinking, when I went to Israel, I went to the Holocaust Museum. And when you first walk in, they say, look, this place gets to you sometimes. And if it does, you can only go all the way through to get out or turn around and go back. If you get that bad, just turn around. It would be better for you because it gets worse as you go. And I thought, man, I'm strong. I can handle anything. But there was about a quarter of a way through, I go in there, and this one display was nothing but kids' shoes piled up. And it was the kids, they took their shoes off before going into the gas chamber. And when you said that, and I said Holocaust a few minutes ago, that's all I can think about is how many people died through that. Innocent. I mean, they can't even defend themselves.
This is a present day Holocaust.
And the bad thing is, as Christians, even we side with politicians that are for this. And there's a consequence for that. And people say, well, but this is defensive list children. They can't even defend themselves. Nobody can speak for them but us. And I think that's what's brought a lot of problems on our country, is because this is going on and nobody's hardly speaking out. And I know there's guys that go to the abortion clinics and stuff like that, but the real voices that ought to be speaking out are. It was like Elijah. He said, everybody on God's side, get over here. Well, it stood for something. And today, I think that's where we're at, because we got Christians on both sides of this issue. And I would say, God would say, this is wrong.
Totally wrong. One of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill. Psalms talk about shedding of innocent blood.
Yes.
One of the 7 abominations that the Lord does not like. And this is one of them. And I think when you stop and look at what it is and what it's doing, you're right. There are people that stand in front of abortion clinics that with tape over their mouth and has life written on it. And it's the Bound of Life, which is the ministry based out of DC. My daughter's part of that. And so she's here preventing women and getting the message out. And it's a ministry to where people have been stopped, have been witnessed to, and they've turned around, got back in their car, or they see them standing out and they sit in their car and they're like, what do I do? And they'll turn around and they'll leave. So that's a life saved. But then you've got the women that go through with that. And like you're saying, you go in that clinic, you turn to life. Instead of turning to life, going out the back door, you turn to death.
Yeah.
And you go in that door, and you got to follow through. You made that decision. You got to follow through. It's like in the museum. You have to follow through to the end. And as you're going through healing, it gets worse as you go through the journey, because the heart represents your heart that the Lord needs healing. But the golden is His presence. He's the one that busts through the middle of your heart. It's like, okay, we're tearing this wall down brick by brick. and you're healing his way. We're healing his way. It's not the way you think it needs to be done, like ignoring and stuffing and or being full of depression and drinking and drugs or food or whatever it is you need to do. You need to allow him to help you work on those issues one by one. And it gets messy. The deeper you go, the messier it gets. The deeper you go, the more raw you're going to get, but the more healing is going to take place. It's the only reason I can sit here and talk about this openly, and others that I know that can help other women heal, that I've been in ministry with since 2012, is because we've allowed the Lord to come into our heart and to heal us so we can talk about it. He doesn't waste any of our pain, the pain that y'all have experienced before we came to Jesus. He doesn't waste any of that. He's going to use it for us to minister to others that need that same hope and the same healing that he gave us, and for them to receive his forgiveness and to accept it, so they can go on with the life that he created them to live.
Yeah. But God's grace is he's allowing you to minister to other women that's going through it. And you know something too, I don't think a lot of people realize too, this affects some men. And you don't hear a lot about that at all. And some people are like, well, men don't have to deal, but men do. Some men do deal with that.
They do, and they deal with it differently than women.
Yeah.
A lot of us has bottled up anger. They just started drinking. And this. I mean, I was numb for 29 years. And then the Lord tries to bring things up, but you push it back down. And men, probably some of the men don't even realize how many they've been a part of, because women go and do this in secret and get it done.
Yeah.
And they go about life because of their own lifestyle and what they had. Some know about it. Some are the ones that take the women to the clinic. And some take them against their wishes. They don't even want it. They want to keep the child, but they have no voice. Like the child, they have no voice. This is a decision I've made up. My mind, you're not going to change it. I'll just go do it on my own. So you're right. They need to go through healing, and they go through a healing in the same way, but they react differently.
Well, what else is God using you to do now? What all do you and your husband do, Keven? And
we're part of a ministry called Covert Recovery. We are able to help men and women who have hurts inside themselves that need healing. You know, the habits of the hang-ups are the result of doing what you chose to do, or the abuse that you went through, or the hurt is deep-rooted. You react to it in a different way. We're able to teach like 26 different lessons. We have 26 testimonies throughout the year, so others can see the hope and the healing and the restoration and the transformation that's happening in people's lives. And a lot of people think that everybody that goes sober recovery like AA has alcohol and drugs. It's false. A third of the people that go to CR have an addiction of some sort. Majority of people in there because of a hurt. And they need healed from that hurt. They need healed from the abuse that they went through. And they need healed from the jealousy and the insecurity and the rejection that they've experienced because of something that they've had.
Which is so much on the rise.
Yeah.
It's insane how, and not just because of this whole pandemic or whatever,
Right.
but there's a rise in just people being distraught and despair. And we talked about this earlier, you know, like one of my heroes was John Belushi, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to do drugs. And you do them, and then you get to a point where you're like, now I can't stop. Why am I more miserable now
Right.
than I was before? And it was basically celebrated. And now you see abortion is celebrated. Like it's this great thing. And it's got to be the devil.
No, it's a devil.
Because you read the Bible, it talked about child sacrifice. It's just a whole other way of doing it. But now putting a bow on it and going, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And it's not. And I could totally see why people would just be wrecked by this. You have a number that people can call for Celebrate Recovery.
The best thing to do is there's an app.
Yeah.
There's a CR app. If you go on your Play Store, just download the CR app. If you plug in your zip code, it'll bring up a CR recovery meeting that we have at Influencers Church.
But you can go to anyone.
Yeah.
Not just the one that is close by. You can go to anywhere.
You can go anywhere
in
you
the
want.
world.
So if you go on vacation, Gordon, and you're up in Ohio, you can plug in the zip code you're closest to and you can go.
Sweet.
Now, if somebody want to get in touch with you or get this book, how would they go about doing that?
The book is on Amazon. It is Brick by Brick, Healing His Way Brick by Brick, and put in my name, Keven Covert. It also has a workbook to go with it, so you can go a little bit deeper. You can do it as a Bible study. The Lord's going to bust through and give you a new heart. Read the scripture right there, Gordon. Can you read? Read that.
Slightly.
Okay.
I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Ezekiel 36:26.
And that's what the book will do. And it's on Amazon.
Oh, boom.
Yeah. Hello. God's presence just busts right through and gives you a new heart. And
You follow me?
Yeah, that's right.
it takes away your stony heart.
Hey, if you've seen his Bible, it's a picture Bible. It's like the youth picture Bible.
It works.
Yeah, with the little pop-up whales and.
It's cool.
Well, hang on to it. Takes you back memory lane. You know, and Amazon it's on Amazon. It's on Westbow Press, which is part of the publishing company that.
Amazon, so you can get it right now without hesitation. Just Brick by Brick by Keven Covert, and so do you have a website or?
I do. It's called Hearts Restored and Renewed.com. I know it's a mouthful, but it's Hearts Restored.
Say it real quick.
Hearts Restored and Renewed, because the Lord restores your heart and gives you a new heart.
Oh wow! Hey, and we got to go kind of quick, but too, her and her husband worked like Hebrew slaves with our event last weekend. That went really good,
Sure.
and man, they really stepped up and worked hard, and they didn't even run off at the beginning. They stayed to the end. That's
a lot of people skip out when they say it's going to be a job.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, we were here until midnight, so.
and
it was an
especially when you
awesome
start washing stuff. Yeah, that's when everybody says like, bye. But anyway, great show. I'm glad you was with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a blessing.
Yep.
Pleasure.
For coming.
It's a pleasure.
Say good night, Gordon.
Good night, Gordon.
Kevin was talking about having an abortion and how God healed her. And this shirt sometimes offends some people. It says, "Thou shalt not kill." God hates abortion in the hands that shed innocent blood. We're not telling you that if you had an abortion, God hates you. We're saying that God will heal the brokenhearted, that she wants us to choose life, that both you and your seed may live.